All right, so I have some some of this black cherry soda. Oh, it's so yummy. I also have a spicy snack stick. Nom 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 nom. So I can gnaw on this while we're going through some campaign notes. I will have all of the material we are invoking up on screen. However, if you want to play along at home, make sure that you have your Dungeon Master's Guide, your Player's Handbook, and if you downloaded it, a copy of this Unearthed Arcana of Ships and the Sea. And in case that you don't, pardon me, you can download it for free right there. Because tonight, my friends, we are going to tie it all together. Our review of that material. We're going to talk about the officers. We're going to talk about the crew members. And we're also going to be invoking the islands and the map that we made just the night before. Well, I mean, just last night, I should say. Now, if you weren't here for parts of it, that's fine. You're going to see the materials going to come up on the screen. And, you know, this is something that I want. I'm not saying this to make you feel like, oh, this dude's brilliant and he's way beyond anything I can do. Because that is not the case. You can do this. You can, just a little bit at a time, step by step, which is exactly how these workshop weeks operate. Step by step, little by little, and it'll all make sense. Especially because maybe a lot of you out there, I mean, you may have the books. Heck, you might have even read this stuff, but maybe it just never connected. Maybe there was never a need to wonder about resource tracking or thinking along these lines when it comes to D&D. But you have the ability to do so. And the reason that you do, my friends, is because you are a natural-born storyteller. As a human being, you are a natural-born storyteller. That is the gift that we have as a species. And because we are invoking this gift, it is accessible to you all out there. And we all manifest it in different ways. If you're younger or older, you might have more or less or just different information to draw upon. You might have a different view on how to make connections between points of interest or, like locations, characters, their relationships with each other. So do not feel discouraged when you see a lot of this information up here. You know, this is me just getting things ready, and I want this to be step by step for you. And honestly, a part of this isn't even just me presenting. I'm open to your all's feedback. Whether it's here live now on Twitch, or if you're viewing this later on YouTube. Number one, thank you. And number two, if you want to take a moment, you can leave a question, a comment, and I'll be happy to reply to you. All right. Let's discuss how we as Dungeon Masters would want to set up a sailing style campaign. We did this once before, and it was actually with a bioship. It was sentient. In fact, it was a great old one that this sort of ship, like cabins and infrastructure was built upon. And we ran that as a very good episodic way to run a campaign, right? Everyone's on the ship kind of provides, and it's more just, port to port, adventure to adventure, which is fine, because that is going to be the base spirit of what we're doing. However, we are going to be operating off of, well, we're not going to say it's sentient or that it's awakened, but we're going to be operating off of an inanimate ship in a setting that would be like the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide. which was another book that we were referencing. We may not heavily reference it here. If you have it, that's fine. Keep it by your side and be proud that you're supporting the hobby because you purchased it. We may not necessarily dip into it, and if we do, hey, it'll be up here for y'all to see. But in this campaign, we're going to make this a little bit more complex on ourselves as a DM. Not impossible. It's just going to be different than perhaps how many of you have run or played in a campaign before. Because we're going to be tracking time and resources. It will be a bit of what we call a hex crawl. Right? Where you have a lot of overland, or in this case, overseas travel. So there's going to be downtime. There's going to be expenses. Money's going to matter. Because upkeeping a ship is expensive. And so instead of being an adventure trying to scrape up 1,000 gold pieces during the course of your first several levels of adventuring and putting your life on the line, 1,000 gold on a sailing ship isn't that much money. Not at all. And so the magnitude of our purchases and the magnitude of everything we're doing is going to be increased. And it may come to the point where 1,000 gold pieces can buy you a sword, a magic sword. Or 1,000 gold pieces can repair your ship and pay your crew. Which is more important in that instance? I mean, that's probably why we want to look for magical swords. But the scope of the campaign may be slightly different. Yes, Dark Initiative. For the regular crew that we generated, I focused on each of the 4 sub-races that were introduced in the Sword Coast Adventures Guide in Skag. And the classes, I did the same. While I did randomly roll for classes, I had to re-roll for Druid several times. It really wanted me to have a Druid. I made sure that our character races and our subclasses were variants that were offered in the Sword Coast Adventures Guide, because I wanted to make sure that we reflected your sailing crew could be very different than your officers, right? They come from all parts of the world. Sailing aboard a ship can be one of the most open-minded, diverse things that you could hope to do. Because you have people from all over speaking many different languages with many different, genetic makeups. And yet everyone is there for a very similar purpose, if not just survival, but where else are you going to be? There is a lot in there. And now, I know also, maybe it's anecdotal, whether it's to me or my play group or just to, various message boards or whatnot that I've seen. The Sword Coast Adventures Guide, I think, has a bit of a... people maybe felt disappointed in it. Especially because there's so much lore and maps and all of this to Faerun. And so the Skag only addresses a portion of it. And I think it had people kind of grumbling, despite there being really, solid content in there. Maybe they were expecting like a 300-page plus book instead of like 150 or so. Maybe the Blade Singers have to go to the Magic Nullification Island for martial training. Yeah, and you know what? That could be a source of one of the adventures that we're going to map out in the second part of the broadcast initiative. Not that I'm saying you can't share ideas now, because certainly throw them out there. If you have them, let them fly, because this is a discussion we're having. But I would definitely want to put that on a list that we're going to be composing in the next segment. All right, so big lead up. Can Matt follow through? He talked big talk. He's talking about this grand overarching campaign of resource management. Is it beyond? I'm skeptical. Is this beyond my capabilities, or are you talking truths? Let's find out. Let's delve into it. And if you have questions, comments, ideas, you did something different on your own tabletop, throw it out there. This isn't the only way you can handle this information. This is the way that I might process it, and it's a starting point for you all to modify as you see fit. And that's the beauty of storytelling. The story is an extension of you and your experiences and how you wish to deliver it. All right. So a couple things we're going to need to consider, right? If we need to track resources, if we need to track, money and time. Time is money in many instances, but they can be separate. If we need to track things like loyalty, right? A crew can become mutinous or disgruntled. And if not a crew, then a single crew person, like a crewman, aboard the ship. Roger Twy, if I were starting this today, I might go full survival mode and make them build a raft on an island. Start there. That is going to be kind of a premise, Roger. I like where you're going with this, and we are going to start similarly. Maybe not as full survival as lashing together a couple logs and pillaging the local creek, kind of a thing. But we are going to start with that concept. And so if that is up your alley, sir, then welcome aboard and get involved with this, and let's explore the escalation and where this can go and where this can grow. Because what we're doing tonight is going to be the basis, or like a foundation idea, which could probably be polished or modified in certain ways, for what I'm going to be implementing in February by having a rotating cast and crew of you all in the audience who want to come aboard a sailing ship and have these weekly episodic adventures. And it will be starting out with some scraps and just building over time, right? It's an open-ended campaign. So maybe we start playing this campaign in year 2 of the channel, because our first anniversary is going to be at the end of January. And we could be playing this for years, and we can see just how far you all have built. You start from a rowboat in a hope and a dream, and you might end up with several galleys, a keep on an island, and all sorts of other things like that. The love boat. All right, so let's pull this together. Let's discuss travel distances. Where you're going to find this in the content we've created is here. Remember, this was the map that we made last night. And as you can see, we applied a hex on top of it. If you want to do a box crawl instead of a hex crawl, go ahead. Hexes are, for many people, a preferred method of overland travel. It's up to you. And you can orient it so that the flats are up and down, or they can go at a diagonal. So what is the scale, right? We made 5 islands, and we can say, well, if it's uniform and just say every hex is 10 miles, all of these are really close together. Do we want that, or do we want a little bit of travel at sea, some downtime, the possibility that they might encounter other ships, monsters, just bad weather as a hazard? And if that's the case, depending on the maps that you choose to use, or that you might make yourself, if you made each of these separately, or you threw them all onto a hex yourself, you can consider, well, every hex that land touches might be a 10-mile hex, right? So if we go from here to here, I'm just above this central mountain. If you can see my cursor. So if we go from here to here, right, one flat side to one flat side, we could call that 10 miles. However, once we hit the sea, maybe the scale of the hexes increases. And maybe every hex becomes 50 miles. In that case, if we were to go from this central isle to the atoll over here with the anti-magic atoll, if we follow the route, so this would be 50, 100, 150, 200, 250, 300 or 300-ish miles that you would have to sail to get from the northern coast of this island to where, I guess we're going to presume that there's a port here that we made. And you may think, whoa, hang on, that seems like a really long distance. It may very well be. I mean, here we have something more like the English Channel, and that's just like 20 miles. From mainland, from continental Europe over to Britain. But if you think about Hawaii, the Hawaiian archipelago is about 1,500 miles long. Right? You go from the big island all the way to the small little tip there in that kind of comet shape. That's 1,500 miles of ocean to sail if you want to go from the tip of the state, from one tip of the state to the next. And yes, and because we do have to travel for days or weeks at a time, as Initiative put it, you have a certain speed that you can go. And, I mean, maybe occasionally you can go faster, depending on the winds, or if you're using wind and oar, or magic, or something along those lines. You can always choose to go slower. What, is there a ghost in there? What are you looking at? That was so sudden. I'm scratching your ear and he's just snapping up. Are any of you ghosts out there? Is he looking into your... You say he's looking into your soul, Rhodey. Are you a ghost? Because I think cats can see that. What are you looking at, bud? And exactly, storms could throw you off. So this is why resource management in this style of a campaign is very important. Because you'll need food and drink. Whether it's magically created or not, you're going to need it. Well, if you want to invent something like that, Rhodey. So if we use this map as our campaign setting, we are able to fit a basic map in all together, but we're able to condense the space between the islands. And in the interior here, if we want to say in this mangrove island, that the hexes all inside go back down to the scale of 10 miles per hex, that's perfectly fine as well. They do it in one piece. Oh, shoot. I have a big straw... You know what? I'll wear it for part 2. I have a big straw hat that I could wear, Rhodey. And I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna wear the hat for Rhodium, and he's going to love it. And here I forgot to do it. At least in the opening first part. So I'll have to grab it for part 2 for you. Now that we have looked at the size of our world, and we've determined, okay, so it's going to take some time, depending on the ship, to get from one island to the next. And by the way, from the southern coast to the northern here, this might even just be, I mean, we might have to go the number of hexes equal to what's on the path. So this isn't 50 miles away from each other, especially because it's going to take, what, we go beyond the waters, 100, 200. So this is indicating that that this island is about 300 miles away from this island, instead of the 50. So by using the paths, that's what's going to act as our guide for our travel distance, right? That's providing the scale, if we didn't already make a map to scale, which you may or may not want to do. That's up to you as the DM who's going to be running this content. But that's how you can compress that information in a chart as above. And of course, you could always hop in here. I mean, especially with WonderDraft, this is a great piece of software. You can even go and make labels and just put, 300 miles, and you could call this the mangrove current or the coconut current or something. And it's going to indicate that this is the path to take, and the path is going to really be a reflection of what is the most efficient way to travel from one island to the next. Right? Why would you want to sail in an inefficient manner, especially if you're going to put that on a navigational chart? So in this case, the ocean is there because the ocean is always there, but it's more just a background that is going to fill in our travels from one island to the next. Yes. So the one down here, I added that at the end for that exact reason, Initiative. When you hand your players a map like this, and they see that all of the other islands, or most of them anyway, are colored in, and you took the time to put in a mountain or a tree or something along those lines, they're going to say, well, why are there no navigation lines? Why isn't it filled in? Well, that would indicate that everyone's aware of this place, but no one ever goes there. And apparently it's not been explored. And it's what that's going to do as a DM is that's going to plant that seed of curiosity. I wonder if we're ever going to end up there. What's on that island? What's it about? And as a DM, that gives you a lot of leeway. That over the course of the campaign, this island can be anything you want it to be. It could be an island paradise of unlimited fruit and fresh water. All the natives, like Star Trek, for Captain Kirk, it's populated solely by green-skinned female characters. It's sort of like a purely Amazonian culture. And some lucky PC can be the Captain Kirk. It could be an absolute hellhole, right? It could be a bubbling toxic mire of undeath, or just the end. Like, not even undeath exists there. It could be haunted. It could just it could be so mundane that maybe no one just ever went there because all of the sailors keep believing in legends and lore, and superstition kept them away. And so when it's about time for your players to perhaps claim an island for themselves, right? A home base that's actually stationed somewhere, what if they want to go there instead? So it can serve several different ways for you as a DM to continue the story, provide a little mystery, introduce new characters, or challenges or monsters, and go from there. So having a map like this, it'll catch their attention, and it'll give you a fungible area that you can use to modify your story as you may see fit. That's Kraken Island. No one has made it through, yet we see people there on our magnifiers. Ooh. So, Dark Initiative, I'm happy you asked that question because you did exactly what I hoped would have been done if I were to present this to you all. Land is a hazard to navigation and best avoided. That's right, you'd rather have every option available on the water because you could go wherever you want. Maybe except up. You can certainly go down. So, it is three-dimensional. Your cruising altitude is sea level, though. All right, so we've discussed the ratio. We've discussed this, and again, if we spent hours crafting this, and we could put towns, and then like footpaths or other like little sailing paths here and there, so people might come here, and we could develop this mini island in a particular fashion. Maybe this has a bunch of dry docks and stuff for shipbuilding and launching, and then you have the mainland, which is all like forest, and there's a big swamp over here. You as the DM are going to take the time to detail what you'd like to detail. For our explanation, this seems reasonable. Where land is touching a hex, or in an approximation, the hexes are 10 miles. Where we have the red travel here, maybe with the exception of something like this, so instead of 10 miles, this is probably just a 5-mile gap. Something like that. However, between the atoll and the mangrove forest, this is about a 300-mile journey. Pardon me. And if you want this to be 100 miles, make it 100 miles. Again, look at real-life circumstances. We talked about the Hawaiian archipelago is 1,500 miles from tip to tip. Look how far England is off of continental Europe. Look how far away Australia is from anywhere else. With this in mind, we can now measure the rate of our ship or the rate of overland travel it would take for us as PCs, or we as DMs, to predict our PCs to travel. Right? A party walking 8 hours in a day, you know, unless you're doing runs or forced marches or something, they can move 24 miles in a day. So with that, we're talking about 2.5 hexes every day under normal sauntering conditions. You know, so they land here, and it's going to take about a day to get from this port, right south of the swamp, to this port, just to the east of the little populated island. Okay, Rhodey, I'll take a look in a little bit here. You know, managing the rope bridges or the tangle of routes that form the highways and byways throughout this island. Maybe it takes a little bit longer because of everything is up and down and all around. We don't have to increase the scale, but again, it's giving us that sense. You know, if we're taking a horse, we could travel even further. And as you're world building and you say, well, it probably would make sense that people would live, you know, a village or a town would probably be maybe a day apart from the next one, maybe less. But that way it would take a day to travel from one to the next. And if you want to go half a day, that's fine. You go to the next town over. That takes what, like 4 hours of travel, or at least several hours of travel, because it might be a couple miles away. You go shopping and you're home by sunset, at least during the summer when you're probably going to be outside more anyway. But think of the scale, because remember, this is a big DM lesson on many levels. Think of the scale about how far you want to spread out your establishments. Or if the towns are 4 days apart, there might not necessarily be a village, but there could be a farming family that has built, you know, kind of a rough inn by means of a second barn. Or, you know, they built a new barn and they're renting out, you know, lofts in the old one because they're in the country and people pass by anyway. Okay. You are going to see that the ships mentioned in the Unearthed Arcana are the exact same ships that are in the PHB and the DMG. We chose a warship for this party. Based on all of the... You can go back in that video and take a look why. Okay? And this is going to be important, right? Creature capacity, 40 crew and 60 passengers. The cargo capacity is 200 tons. And it can sail at 4 miles per hour. Or in this case, it'll travel 96 miles per day. So all of a sudden, 300 miles might not seem that bad. 3 days from one island to the next. I mean, given the fact that you're going to be at the mercy of storms in the sea and pirates or whatever else, you definitely would like to minimize that time when you're in this unlimited potential, you know, the horizon is what it is. Now, of course, this is if you have the wind behind you and things are optimal. If you're sailing into the wind, it's half that speed, or if you take damage to your sails, there's notes about that here in the Unearthed Arcana as well. I'm not going to get into that minutia. It's there. But if we're considering things to be optimal, then there you have it. Now, this stuff here, this is where we get into the Unearthed Arcana providing extra stats above what the DMG talks about. Hang on. There we go. Yay. All right, so we know that we are looking to operate this ship with 40 crew members. What does this mean? Let's go to the DMG. And actually, the DMG has the warship going at 2.5 miles per hour. So depending on the source you want to use, there is a difference there. I'm sorry, I forgot to bring that up. And it has a crew at 60. Which do you want to go for? Let's use the Unearthed Arcana. But we'll get the we'll have this idea from the DMG, the Dungeon Master's Guide. Alright, so we have a crew of 40. A ship needs a crew of skilled hirelings to function. As per the player's handbook, one skilled hireling costs at least 2 gold per day. The minimum number of skilled hirelings needed to crew a ship depends on the type of vessel, as shown in the airborne and waterborne vehicles table. You can track the loyalty, we're going to get to this in the next part here. Let's just stop there. Crew wages. We have 40 crew members. The crew are skilled. Now, we could presume that you can have unskilled crew if you want to save a little bit of money, but we can talk about quality and such. What this is saying every day your ship exists, whether it's moving or not. Well, presumably. I mean, if you're going to contract sailors or the like. Every day your ship functions, you have to make at least 80 gold to break even just by paying your crew. Yeah, exactly. I mean, so yeah, you could press gang or you could recruit unskilled. But let's just presume, for the sake of starting simple and building something more complex on top of that, let's just presume that we have an optimum crew. But Roger, you're absolutely correct. Hey, welcome back, Katie. This is a lot of gold, right? Now, you can modify this as a DM in a couple ways. Roger Twy brought up maybe you press gang some people, or you have ore slaves. Depending on the campaign you're running, they work for free. I mean, they're still going to cost you money, and we're going to get to that in another point. But you're not paying them. It's also a lot of gold just to lug around if you're off to sea for 6 months. Yeah, and so you'll have to be creative in how you pay, or your promises to pay. Hi, ma'am. Can I help you? I have a parrot now, apparently. Because there are supplies that are needed, right, for upkeep, and the like. Hey, welcome, Dark Wolf. Are you paying your sailors 2 gold, and then you're asking them to purchase food from the commissary and other necessities? And so it's a pure payout, but they have to purchase back from the ship? Or are you going to say, well, the crew would be paid 2 gold, but the ship is going to keep 1 gold per day for lifestyle expenses. And lifestyle expenses here, if you're feeding your crew a modest... Here, I'll zoom in to make it a little easier to read. If you're giving your crew a modest lifestyle, then that would consume 1 gold of their 2 that you'd be paying them. And so the contract would effectively be sail with us for a month, or we'll just say 30 days. We'll pay you 30 gold in cash. However, we will provide you food, drink, clothes, like a uniform. And so we'll provide you, room, board, and necessities that are deducted from your wages. So those are options for you to think about. Passengers. The table indicates the number of small and medium passengers the ship can accommodate. Accommodations consist of shared hammocks in tight quarters. A ship outfitted with private accommodations can carry 1/5 as many passengers. A passenger is usually expected to pay 5 silver pieces per day for a hammock, but prices can vary from ship to ship. A small private cabin usually costs 2 gold per day. If you're in the business of lugging people around, I mean, we could play Plane Fare Simulator 2K18, right? Going back to the stats in a warship, if we can carry 60 passengers, and I mean, let's say that we don't even apportion anything to a private cabins or like a first class accommodations. Oh, not copper, silver. All right, so if we're just going with the raw payout, every day we're paying out 80 gold to our sailors. Every day we're making 30 gold off of our passengers if we're full. That means we still have to worry about where are we coming up with this extra 50 gold. Well, this is where we can have a lot of fun as junior economists. Or as people who want to bargain. People who love trying to haggle and find a good deal. Because you can see that in a warship, we have a cargo capacity of 200 tons. We can presume that the cargo table indicates the maximum tonnage each kind of ship can carry. We can make the presumption that cargo is going to be in addition to whatever would be standard aboard a ship. Right? So the warship comes with mangonels, ballista, the crew. And if you think about it, let's say every sailor is 150, 200 pounds. If the cargo... In fact, I think that... Does the UA clear that up? How many creatures and how much cargo it can carry? Creatures include both the crew required to operate the vessel and any passengers who might ride along. Passengers could include marines who repel boarders and lead the attack on monsters and enemy ships. Alright, so I'm going to imagine that the cargo in this case is going to be what we can take on outside of the necessities of the ship, or what the ship is already accommodating. You know, with its pieces, parts, etc. Oh, hey, what's up here? Trade goods, you say? Hey, Daily, welcome. Yeah, it was fun watching y'all play, Daily. I enjoyed the chance to come by and see you at work. Oh, the voices sounded a little poppy though. Like like an audio compression or something along those lines. So I hope everything is okay with the broadcast. I meant to type that out. I meant to type that out to you all, but I was getting things ready and I completely derped on that. I'm sorry. But because I want you all to have a good show, I wanted to let you know that at least on my end, it could have even just been localized to me. I mean, it could have been something in the background. But anyway, hello. So if we look at the cost of trade goods here, right? 1 copper piece for a pound of wheat. Well, we can. There's 2,000 pounds in a ton, so we could pay 2,000 copper, or so we just carry the decimal 2 places. We could pay 20 gold for a ton of wheat, and then we multiply that by 200. And if we could procure it, then 20 times 200, we can pay 20,000 gold for a cargo full of wheat that we can turn around in some way. Okay, all right. Then yeah, it sounded like the voices might have been like either compressed or I was only, I don't know, it was like dropping like a third of a syllable on the words. It was kind of weird and a little poppy sounding. So I'm glad that feedback is, I hope that can help you all out. I wasn't sure if maybe someone was using a voice changer or if it was just, you know how if you ever use push to talk, sometimes you might push the key early or let it up early, and so you lose just like a fraction of a word. I was getting that kind of effect when I was listening to you all. So here, we need to weigh our options. If we want to haul cargo, which passengers may be cargo, right? If you want to define them as such. As a DM, this would be up to you. Do you get 60 passengers and then cargo on top? Or do you get 60 passengers, you would take the average weight of the passengers and then any cargo they bring along, and then that would eat into how much extra cargo you can haul. So what do you want to do? Just hauling passengers? Ooh. That's not as good, huh? In fact, if we want to talk economics, check this out. Let's say that you want to go luxury liner and everything is a private cabin. Remember, you can haul 1/5 the amount of passengers if they get private quarters. And this could be an average. I don't know. Maybe you have like a family suite or something, you know, and it's not all single bunks. We can get into great detail here. And we can calculate the price per cabin, and if we want to offer like a 4-person cabin or the like. But again, let's go with what is simple and what's presented to us in the documents. We could cram 60 people in hammocks and make 30 gold a day, or we can cram 12 passengers in and make 24. And in that case, we are down 48 passengers and cargo. What could we haul in our cargo if not people and their objects? Did any of you sign up for an economics lesson? What is your opportunity cost? That's right. What is your opportunity cost, my friends? And if you want an answer, including an awesome video, because Investopedia is an awesome website for this. Check that out. In fact, I'll be sure to put a link. I vote we become the next Love Boat. Hey, Chaotic, welcome. That was brought up before, earlier in chat. So now there's 2 people who just want to run a cruise line campaign. and so D&D becomes becomes like a party boat, cruise line. Tropical vacations and the like. Anyone can fight pirates and krakens, but can people handle the relationships of the passengers and the crew? So anyway, we can weigh, figuratively and literally, the costs of the type of business we want to run, right? We know that we need at least 80 gold to pay our crew. Or we can cut costs if we want a lower quality crew. Yes, I am getting to that. I'm getting to that daily. That is an excellent point. Yeah, Chaotic, don't worry. If you brought it up independently without knowing, then clearly this has to happen. Maybe not here, but in concept, I think we can all entertain a D&D tropical cruise line. I mean, wouldn't that be cool to like take you past the straits of the dragon talons and, you know, take you past the whirlpool into the 7th layer of hell, you know, or just all of these fantastic high fantasy, you know, and off to the right you see the floating isles of Gibbledy-Goo. And who wants an Alaskan cruise or a Caribbean cruise when you can see this stuff? You know, the boat goes through some seaside cave full of gnomes because it's a gnome territory, and they're all singing "It's a Small World." It's part of the entertainment. So you can look at your cargo cost, and then what can you turn it around for? Or, if no money trades hands because bartering is very much a thing, what would you bring to barter with other sailors or with the island to which you're traveling? A lot of your expenses can be paid with no exchange of money. Right? If we go over to, let's say that this island that has all of the grassland and such, they grow goats. I mean, they raise goats, I should say, right? Goats all day, every day, or sheep. This is Settlers of Catan, everyone. There we go. This is Settlers of Catan D&D style. And they have plenty of sheep. But we come over here to the atoll, and they probably don't have that many sheep. And if I remember correctly, I think this is the place that has a demonic temple hidden somewhere. So you know they got to be sacrificing goats or sheep. There's at least a demand for that, if not the wool or anything else. So we calculate. Right, here's a goat. One goat is 1 gold piece. And we can consider things like feed per day, at least for a horse, is 5 copper pieces. So for a goat, it might be a little bit less. And how much it weighs. And you can say, well, you know what? We can buy goats for 1 gold a piece here. Unless your DM says, well, that's what they're sold to you at, at retail. If you want to wholesale purchase goats, then you could get them for, I don't know, you could haggle 6 or 7 silver a piece. Right? So you're looking to make 3 silver per head of goat. Maybe more, maybe less. And you calculate, all right, so if every hex is 50 miles, 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, it's about 600, maybe 650 miles to the port that will receive your goats. You see where we're going with this? If they're purchased for one... Did you sign up for an economics lesson / test? I told you there'd be a quiz. I forget. Someone brought it up. I think Daily, or not Daily. Your nemesis Diadems Daily. Diadems brought it up. He's like, I don't remember paying for classes, or are you paying me to work or something like that? But if you're in D&D school, then here's your problem. What would be your break-even cost, right? If we made no money whatsoever on our goats, what would be our break-even in order to get goats from this island to this island? If we have to take into consideration the cost of feed, the cost of water, and the like. Of course, magic can take care of a lot of that, right? But if you figure out the raw cost, and then you say, well, we can save money, and you want to get more advanced, how much does it cost to hire a mage? A mage is more than just a skilled worker, right? A mage is probably going to ask for maybe like 5 gold a day. At least not, because 2 would be a sailor, right? You're paying your sailor, a mundane sailor, 2 gold apiece. So what's a wizard going to ask for? What's a sorcerer going to ask for, or a cleric? They're probably going to ask for more than that. Is the cost of your cleric or wizard going to save you money or cost you more money in the long run? I bring this up because I don't want to baffle you. I don't want you to say, oh my gosh, this is way too much. This is beyond my reckoning. I didn't sign up for this. I just want to bonk goblins with a sword. Come on, Matt, what are you doing? Hey, Diadems, welcome. Speak of the devil and he shall come, right? And hey, 12 for 10. But do you see where we're going if we want to run a campaign like this? Without doing the math here in front of you, I should have set this up as a story problem. I've taught econ, so I could have brought up one of my old tests. Shame on me. Anyway, if our atoll buys goats for a gold apiece, it's probably not going to be worth it. Why would you haul goats there? However, because goats are in short supply, the demand for them is higher because you got to sacrifice something to that demonic temple that's in the atoll. I think that's the right island. I can go back to our resource document on that. Let alone for food or anything else. Or maybe the islanders think that their horns are good luck. And it would be a wasted item otherwise, but you could sell it as something different. Maybe goats are purchased for 3 gold apiece at the atoll. Ooh, suddenly, that might be worth it. That might be worth taking 20, 30 goats across the sea to the atoll. Maybe I'll make up one of these things and I'll post it on our Discord. See if you can pass the sailor's test. But it's not about terms and knots and tying knots and all that. So anyway, measure the cargo costs and income. And these, we could just put, X and Y for variables, depending on what it is we want to haul. But I addressed the point with you all about what can be considered. And that's going to give us our profit per ton, right? Ah, see, Syart? That's true. But you got to remember, those slaves are going to have to make it intact. So while you're not paying them, they are going to be consuming food and water, and they're taking up cargo space. However, because you didn't necessarily have to purchase that cargo, so to speak, you save the 7 silver pieces ahead as you pay for the goat. And perhaps you can see, I mean, well, in our modern world, of course, we see such a thing as, oh, it's barbaric, and who does this? Go back in time. You know, an issue of slavery was very much an economic. I mean, for working for being press ganged onto a ship, for you know, in a form kind of like indentured servitude, which is like a softer form, or for straight up slavery. It was a very economic thing to do, right? If you don't have to pay people, you're saving yourself a tremendous cost monetarily. Obviously, we're weighing, you know, human life and experiences versus, you know, a piece of gold or whatever. And so I want to keep that in context here. But yeah, look at it like that. You know, if slavery exists in the D&D world, whether it's commonplace, I mean, look at old Greece. Slavery was a part of daily life, and it was almost expected. It was interwoven. You know, the family, the master family, had certain liberties, yes, but also certain obligations to their slaves. And the slaves were, well, in the generality that history provides, the slaves were provided for. They might have even been given some spending money, but they were certainly given, you know, a place to live, a roof over their heads. They're given something to do, and they're given room and board. They just weren't necessarily, like, paid as per what we would consider to be, like, labor today. And so, is this more of a caste system style? Or is this purely economic? Is it accepted, or is it rejected? Or does it really vary island by island? One of our 5 islands could very well embrace that, for whatever reason. And that could cause economic opportunity. And that can cause conflict. Right? Think of this. If you're on the crew of the ship and you have the captain come out and say, all right, this is the first time we're doing it, but I ran some numbers, and if we go and fetch slaves from Island A, we can sell them at Island D, and I'll tell you what, mateys, instead of your contracted 2 gold a day, I calculate that off of the profits, I can pay you 4 gold per day. As an individual, right? Let's say that the captain's an NPC. As a PC, is your character's morality or philosophy or religion, or we could condense that to the term alignment, is your alignment worth 2 gold pieces per day? If it's a 10-day voyage, you're fixing to make an extra 20 gold. And you know what? For your character, you might say, I don't have a problem with that. Because it's your character. I mean, as a player, I mean, your own feelings about the situation aside, as a character. And you know what? Other characters might say, I don't like this. I didn't sign up to be a slaver. Pardon. What's happening to the captain is taking jobs like this. And suddenly we see morale, which we're going to get to here real soon. Loyalty and quality. It can affect loyalty and quality. Yes, but if you transport slaves and the ship is attacked, you have a lot more options for the story than if you transport goats. You may want to transport something that is for the story. Right? We watched last week the Indianapolis speech from Jaws. I don't even mind playing it again when we take a break. Hey, Coffee Cat, welcome. And hey, Fluffy Sheep, we're totally only sacrificing goats and not sheep. So what are you hauling, right? And then we come to, what is our lifestyle cost? Now, earlier I said, well, you could pay your crew 2 gold piece a day, and they can just hoard it, or they can scrape by, or you contract and say, well, your skilled labor in the PHB, you pay skilled labor 2 gold pieces per day. However, to live a modest lifestyle costs 1 gold piece. It's behind my head. I can't scroll too far here. And so therefore, net, you're paying 1 gold piece and you're giving your sailors decent room and board. Of course, you could save money if you want to give them poor quality food. Or you could just pay them 2 gold and they have to purchase everything through the ship's commissary. But there's more to that was brought up just a little bit earlier. Daly brought it up. You know, don't forget the contingency fund you'll need to always have because of boats and water. Your boat is going to need continuous maintenance. Right? Paint will peel. You need more tar. You need to replace planks. You need a new mast because of a storm. I mean, if not in lifestyle cost, we could just call this ship upkeep. So not only do you need 80 gold per day for us to run the warship that we generated, you are going to want some sort of equivalent. You know, every day you should be setting aside what could be considered wear and tear on your ship. You know, to have some sort of a rainy day fund. You know, if we come over to... Oh, if we come over here, I'm blocking, well, kind of. A warship costs 25,000 gold pieces to purchase. You might want to hang on to some sort of a maintenance fund that is, what, at least 10% of this cost, if not more. Right? 10% of this would be 2,500 gold. If you want to go higher, and you want to say 5,000, so in case of emergency, and you may not have that 5,000 up front, but every day, if you're trying to average what you want to hold, you know, for this like self-insurance policy, how much would that be? Right? Let's say we have 5,000 gold divided by 365. If we're going to presume there's 365 days in this D&D year. Every day for a year, we need to make sure that we're setting aside, all rounded up, 14 gold pieces per day. Now, of course, once we hit this mark, you know, until it's used up, we wouldn't have to set it aside again. But think about that, right? Let's just call it 14 gold because we're still setting money aside. For a fresh warship just setting out into the great blue yonder, I guess that's more the Air Force, right? This is 94 gold on a daily basis exiting our pockets that we need to make sure we're good for, or you know what our crew's gonna do? Either that or they're just gonna not sail with us anymore and we're gonna get a bad reputation. And then your business is done. You want to talk about a total party kill? Well, in this case, it'd be like a total party bankruptcy. TPB. Sarah says maybe one of the slaves is one of the characters that later becomes a hero. And yes, so we're going to be talking about the storytelling aspect to these considerations for a tracking sheet, Syart. So hang on to that idea. It's a good one, and we can work with that. But all of this information is here for you in your core rulebooks. In the PHB and the DMG. In fact, oh, I'm sorry, there's even sort of an abbreviation under ship repair. Repairs to a damaged ship can be made while the vessel is berthed. Repairing 1 hit point of damage requires 1 day and costs 20 gold pieces for materials and labor. Our warship has 500 hit points. So if we take 100 hit points worth of damage, that's 2,000 gold. That's 2,000 gold to fix. And if you go with the rate of 1 hit point for every day of repair, our ship is now in dock for over 3 months. And you know what's not happening for 3 months? Anyone out there in the audience want to say? The Great Blue Drink. The Chaotic Blue Drink. That is 3 whole months of no cargo, no passengers, nothing except expense out of your pocket. All of a sudden, having a wizard that knows fabricate and mending and all this other stuff sounds pretty good to have aboard, huh? Except your wizard is more like insurance policy. Would you rather pay your wizard 5 gold pieces a day as an insurance policy instead of having to go and get things done manually? And that's even if this is possible. If you're running a campaign like this, you may, to sort of escalate the survival aspect, you may decide to outlaw, or I mean not outlaw, to forbid mending, fabrication, and there's a third one that's similar to that, and I'm derping on the name of the spell. Yeah, or even a cleric with create food and water, or we talked about it in the first week, a druid or a ranger that knows Goodberry. But yet, in fact, it's negative. It's money being lost, Chaotic. Right? No one's being paid. We're only paying money out of our pocket because time is money in this case. And so our lifestyle cost is, if we want to insure our ship, there we go. All right, so then one of the last major things that we have to track, because for everything we've discussed, we can get into minutia. I mean, you could write an Excel calculator to go through these options. And very much that could be, the captain might have an accountant, just like a little gnome with an abacus, and all day you're just sliding things across. Although an abacus may not be the best on a ship, because as it goes back and forth, so too will your beads. Maybe in a spellcaster with control water gust of wind. Will the time saved mean more money in your pocket than what you're paying out for those magical services? And remember, a spellcaster's probably going to ask for more than 2 gold pieces per day. Pardon. If that's the going rate for a sailor, a mundane sailor who knows how the ship operates, can tie all the knots, can perform functions on the ship itself, is someone who has this magical capability going to ask for more? And the answer is yes. I imagine that they're going to. Now, what that is, that depends on the services, and in the PHB, it does get into spellcasting services here. People who are able to cast spells don't fall into the category of ordinary hirelings. It might be possible to find someone willing to cast a spell in exchange for coin or favors, but it is rarely easy and no established pay rates exist. As a rule, the higher the level of the desired spell, the harder it is to find someone who can cast it, and the more it costs. Hiring someone to cast a relatively common spell of 1st or 2nd level, such as Cure Wounds or Identify, is easy enough in a city or town and might cost 10 to 50 gold pieces, plus the cost of any expensive material components. Finding someone able and willing to cast a higher level spell might involve traveling to a large city, perhaps one with a university or prominent temple. Once found, the spellcaster might ask for a service instead of a payment, the kind of service that only adventurers can provide, such as retrieving a rare item from a dungeon locale or traversing a monster-infested wilderness to deliver something important to a distant settlement. So there is, so look here. This is a one-time cost of 10 to 50 gold pieces for, let's be generous and say, a second level spell. Or a first level spell cast up into the second level slot. Again, you might have a spellcaster that says, well, I'd rather just get a constant paycheck. So I'll go on salary and not commission, if you get what I'm saying. And so you might be able to average it out. You might be able to get a second level caster for 10 gold a day. And they're willing to blow all their slots, or at least most of them, or whatever agreed upon. Like, maybe the caster always wants, like, an emergency reserve for, personal, like, getting out of there or whatever. But you might make a contract with the captain and says, I'll cast 2 spells a day, and you'll pay me 10 gold per day to do so. Suddenly, that one crew member is getting paid the same amount as 5 others. Hey, Trust, welcome. I got fed up reading Strongholds and Followers. Need a break. Not a better place to chill out than here. Well, welcome. So instead of discussing architecture and battle plans, we're having an economics lesson, Trust a Flump. And so Flump, let's talk about what was in the very last box of that brick of Monster Menagerie 2. Yep, and so as you can see, we've been calculating this. We're talking about opportunity costs, Trust a Flump. We're talking about weighing how much would you have to sell a goat for if you purchase it for 7 silver, and it takes 4 days of travel in order to get to the next port. But they're only willing to pay a gold a piece. Is it worth the cost, right? Because you have to also consider, food and other like feed and water for the animals and all that. So the whole lesson to this Flump is kind of the minutia of resource tracking if you want to run a campaign in that style, and especially if you have grandiose plans, right? Our economics in this campaign are going to be on a higher scale. A level 1 adventurer seeing 30 gold. What's going on? How did that happen? How did I get so much money? And yet here we have a sailor, a commoner, a level 0 commoner, a sailor receiving 2 gold pieces a day for their work. And the captain of the ship is having to look at hundreds of gold over the course of a single journey just to break even. And you want to talk about saving up 1,000 gold pieces for a magic sword? What's going to be more important? A magic sword on your hip, like some, enchanted cutlass, or being able to buy cargo for your next trip and paying your sailors, and setting something aside to have your ship repaired. Got to trade those big ticket items that are kind of light. Saffron, adamantine, or mithril in particular, right? But it does make you a very tasty pirate target, because when people buy those big ticket items, rumors spread, because information is also a very lightweight item that can cost a lot of money. But if I'm willing to pay an informant 100 gold pieces for a cargo manifest that's going to net me 10,000, oh, you better believe I'm going to be paying an informant 100 gold pieces for that. Per DMG, 20 GP for 1 hit point of damage to repair. Yep, Blue, you're getting an economics lesson whether you like it or not. Haha! I knew I would teach economics one more time. Flump, we brought up Investopedia. We brought up... No, Flump, if you want to throw some info out there, if any of you, Flump or beyond, if you want to throw out your own experiences doing this in a D&D setting, you are welcome to do so. This is an open table and conversation. All right, now we come to another resource. And, I mean, of the major resources, right? We talked about our time through distance and how we were able to compress the map and say the land hexes are 10 miles and the water hexes are 50. So to measure, we're kind of traveling along the what we're considering to be the most efficient route that we've planned out. Right? That's a time resource. We actually talked about money or other trade goods for barter or the like as a resource. And now we have to go into something that, between you and me, this is something I'd like to get my doctorate in. It's called behavioral economics. I guess more on that when I begin to cross that bridge. So, I mean, I already have my foundation masters, but let's see if I can score a doctorate with what we're doing here as well. What is the attitude, right? What is the quality of your crew? The higher the quality of your crew, the better performance you're going to receive. And in a lot of economic ways, you might hear about this, about companies that work to hold on to their employees because overturning them costs more than paying them above market wages in order to keep them happy and to keep them employed at your desk or at your machine or at your whatever. You know, you'll pay for your quality. And we also, economics relies on the fact that in the aggregate, people make rational decisions. In the aggregate. If I don't like something, I'm not going to purchase it. If it's too expensive, I'm not going to purchase it. If it's underpriced, I certainly will. Even if I didn't necessarily need it. Because maybe I can turn it around for more. Now, of course, we're not always creatures of ration. But in the aggregate, as an underpinning foundation of basic economics, we consider people to make rational decisions. And going with that presumption, let's take a look at how this is implemented in a D&D sense. And we can do that through quality and by loyalty. A ship requires a number of able-bodied sailors to crew it, as specified in its stat block. A crew's skill, experience, morale, and health are defined by its quality score. A crew starts with a quality score of +4, and that score varies over time, going as low as -10 and as high as +10. It decreases as a crew takes casualties, suffers hardship, or endures poor health. It increases if the crew enjoys high morale, has good health care, and receives clear, fair leadership. Remember what I was talking about? If the captain just suddenly said, hey, we're going to be a bunch of slave runners, and everyone's like, we didn't sign up for that. Even though it's legal, your crew might have moral or religious objections. A typical crew member uses the commoner stat block on the monster manual. If you have your monster manual, you can crack it open to a commoner, and there you go. That's what you're paying 2 gold. So that is our skilled labor, like a minimum wage for skilled labor. And so the commoner, that's what a commoner receives. Obviously, your crew is going to ask for more money. Not your crew, your officers. And your captain is probably going to be, taking a certain percentage off the top before then distributing money to everyone else, or some other agreement. Loyalty and quality. When dealing with an individual member of the crew, you might find it useful to use the optional loyalty rule from Chapter 4 of the Dungeon Master's Guide. To convert a quality score to an individual's loyalty score, add 10 to the crew's quality score. So quality, we're going to start at a +4. Now from here as the DM, it's up to you. Has your crew been performing well? Have you been paying them on time and they're enjoying their work? Maybe every month you up the quality by 1. And by the way, it does get into ways that you can, it addresses mutiny if it gets too low, or how shore leave can also increase. There's also an activity as well. You can raise morale as the first mate in certain conditions. Yeah, Blue, you walked into an educational trap. So we start at this +4, and what this is used in for the Unearthed Arcana is initiative. And I believe there's something else. It's not coming to mind immediately. But if we get into ship-to-ship combat, your initiative is your quality score plus your dex score. Or not your dex score, your dex mod for the ship. And our warship has a dex of -3. So with this baseline, this starting morale, our dexterity modifier, or our initiative modifier, is +1. Now, if you feed your crew well, and you know that they can trust a competent captain and officers, and they're paid on time, then they eat well, and they know that if they get hurt, there's a cleric or a druid or someone on board to take care of them, or a competent doctor in some capacity, then all of a sudden they're going to be more willing to fight. They're going to be acting a little bit more quickly, a little bit more professionally, right? If your quality goes up to +10, even with that modifier, you're still rolling initiative at +7 for this big clunky warship. And at a +7, if you can bring your broadsides around more quickly than your enemy, guess what's going to happen? You're going to enjoy a longer and better quality of life. That's right, Pocket. Education stream hype. And the fools think that we're playing D&D. Now, for those of you who might not have dealt with loyalty, open your DMGs. Come on, class. Told you, have your DMGs. Have your DMGs open to page 93. This is in chapter 4, by the way. Loyalty is an optional rule you can use to determine how far an NPC party member will go to protect or assist the other party members of the party, even those he or she doesn't particularly like. An NPC party member who is abused or ignored is likely to abandon or betray the party, whereas an NPC who owes a life debt to the characters or shares their goals might fight to the death for them. Loyalty can be role-played or represented by this rule. An NPC's loyalty is measured on a numerical scale from 0 to 20. The NPC's maximum loyalty score is equal to the highest charisma score among all adventurers in the party, and its starting loyalty score is half that number. If the highest charisma score changes, perhaps a character dies or leaves the group, adjust the NPC's loyalty score accordingly. Now, can you break that? Of course. You're the DM, you're the party, everything is your story. Generally, though, loyalty is built up because you have at least one person in the group who can get along with the NPC and form a bond strong enough that the NPC wants to cooperate or even go out of their way to risk their lives for the group. You know, so the party leader may not be very charismatic. It could be, you know, Kronk the Barbarian, and who took charisma as a dump score. Now, everyone looks to his battle prowess, and that's fine. But Kronk just doesn't get along with the NPC in this fashion. I mean, they may roleplay well enough together. Kronk may very well like the NPC, but Kronk's demeanor just kind of grates on that person. Meanwhile, we come to, like, Susanella the Bard, who is rocking a 20 charisma, and suddenly that NPC can be a lot more likable, right? The potential is greater to have at least someone who can socially understand what's going on, and to build bridges and to make bonds stronger, because they're capable of doing so in this abstract fashion. And so by this, if Susanella the Bard, yeah, very high fantasy name, right? Susanella. Ooh, who'd ever think of that? And so the starting loyalty of that NPC is going to be at 10. Because Susanella's charisma is 20. And it can grow up to 20 from there. Alright, they start out, and it might be cordial. You know, you hired me, you paid my price, that's fine. I'm not going to betray you. I may not give my life for you. Like, to go out of my way to do so. However, after some adventuring, suddenly this NPC really is vested in the party, in the adventure, in their goal and what they're doing. And over the course of time, it could be quick, or it could be over the course of months of gameplay, or in-game years. The NPC's attitude increases until now it can match the 20 charisma that Susanella the Bard has. Right? The capacity has been filled. Tracking loyalty. Keep track of an NPC's loyalty score in secret DMs, so that the players won't know for sure whether an NPC party member is loyal or disloyal, even if the NPC is currently under a player's control. An NPC's loyalty score increases by 1d4 if other party members help the NPC achieve a goal tied to its bond. I'll touch on that in a little bit. Remember, when we roll NPCs on the channel, we make a bond for them, and we're going to reference that in just a second. Likewise, an NPC's loyalty score increases by 1d4 if the NPC is treated particularly well, for example, given a magic weapon as a gift, or rescued by another party member. An NPC's loyalty score can never be raised above its maximum. When other party members act in a manner that runs counter to the NPC's alignment or bond, and that could be Krunk the Barbarian, reduce the NPC's loyalty score by 1d4. Reduce the NPC's loyalty score by 2d4 if the character is abused, misled, or endangered by other party members for purely selfish reasons. That's going to be up to you to decide at the tabletop as a DM and PC. An NPC whose loyalty score drops to 0 is no longer loyal to the party and might part ways with them. A loyalty score can never drop below 0. An NPC with a loyalty score of 10 or higher risks life and limb to help fellow party members. If the NPC's loyalty score is between 1 and 10, its loyalty is tenuous. An NPC whose loyalty drops to 0 no longer acts in the party's best interests. The disloyal NPC either leaves the party, attacking characters who attempt to intervene, or works in secret to bring about the party's downfall. Rhodey, I think it was 12. So to start an order would be $3 for the initial shipping on the first figure, then the cost of the figure. And then if you want any additional figures, they would be the cost of the figure plus 50 cents. But if you're going to purchase a large chunk of minis, I drop that extra 50 cents for the shipping on the extras. Just that initial $3 would sort of float the cost. So the bullet, if it was, I'll check it out for you here real quick. Yeah, so the huge bullet was 12. So to purchase that would be 15. 3 for the shipping, 12 for the bullet. And then you'd have an order open. And if you want to add to that over time, you can do so because I can just hang on to the figure in reserve for you for taking care of it. Or if you want me to just ship it out immediately, you can let me know that too, Rhodey. It does sound disgruntled, and wouldn't you be, right? Especially if everyone is crammed together aboard a ship. Right? Close quarters, and everyone's running on fight or flight. The sea has no obligation to be friendly to anyone. Well, I have the large size. I'm sorry, the huge bullet that I showed on stream the other night. That's 12. I do have the large size, so it's on a 2-inch base instead of a 3-inch base. That one is the $6 one. So it'd still be $3 to open up the shipment, and it'd be the $6 to get the large size one. So if you have questions, just let me know. So now we take loyalty, which maybe we look at the officers in a particular fashion as individuals because they stand out amongst the rank and file of the rest of the crew, and maybe you can apply loyalty there, or you can remember we can swap back and forth. Let's look at the Unearthed Arcana here. To convert a quality score to an individual's loyalty score, just add 10 to the crew's quality score. Right? We can go to -10. So if we add the 10, it would be 0, and therefore I think we're going to be facing a mutiny. In fact, we'd be facing a mutiny even before then, I think. Let's go over that real quick. A poorly led or mistreated crew might turn against its officers. Once per day, if a crew's quality score is lower than 0, the captain must make a charisma, intimidation, or persuasion check modified by the crew's quality score. So if our quality is -2 and we rolled, 10 on an intimidation, we get an 8. If the check totals between 1 and 9, the crew's quality score decreases by 1. Uh-oh. If the check, and so now if we get to the point where if the check total is 0 or lower, the crew mutinies. They become hostile to the officers and might attempt to kill them, imprison them, or throw them overboard. The crew can be cowed into obedience through violence, combat, or offers of treasure and other rewards. When the DM ends the mutiny, the crew's quality score increases by 1d4. Now, it doesn't reset back up to a high number. Remember, we just had a violent overthrow of the leadership of the ship. And so there's probably still suspicion, lingering feelings of doubt or insecurity. But it at least does improve, and it gets us back out of 0, right? Shore leave. Life aboard a ship is a constant wear on the crew. Spending time in port allows the crew to relax and regain its composure. If a crew's quality score is 3 or lower, the score increases by 1 for each day the crew spends in port or ashore. And so this 3 or lower is a threshold that's put in, as well as with a raise morale. That the first mate is an action that the first mate can take up here. And so yes, just as a singular NPC can betray the party if the party mistreats that NPC, a crew can take the cumulative action of a mutiny against the captain or the officers if they feel they're being abused or other dire circumstances happen. And so our starting loyalty, our loyalty in this case may be 14, or remember, the UA suggests captains have a high charisma. If our captain has a charisma of 16, then our loyalty would technically be an 8. But this is telling that we just start in the aggregate at a +4. However, our officers, if we want to consider them individuals apart from the crew, so the crew's quality is a summary of many things. But the loyalty of the individual officers might be at an 8. But if you want to round it all together, then you could just do as it says here. To convert quality to a loyalty score, add 10 to the crew's quality score. So in that case, we'd have a 14. So the crew would start out fairly loyal, even if the captain only had a 16, right? Because 16 would be the cap. But they would already be, yeah, we're with the captain here. Does that make sense? I hope it does, because this reputation, this rationality, as we're discussing economics, this rationality is a resource to consider. Now, if you want to run a campaign like this, do you have to have everything that we talked about? No, not at all. Can you have more? Oh, yes. This rabbit hole can go very far, especially if we're weighing economics and the decisions for this and that, and to go from there. And you know what? This coming week, I think we're going to review a certain book that came out very recently about strongholds and followers and the like. And we can even take this conversation a little bit deeper with the considerations that new supplement, well, unofficial, I mean, solid but not official supplement to 5th edition can offer. But that's next week. Let's focus on what we're doing this week with the resources at hand. So these are the things, right? We got to keep track of our budget, you know, our food and our drink. Yeah, Chaotic Blue, cabin fever. You know, if you have a bard, not only could your bard be providing magical assistance in some things, but maybe they can be an entertainer for the crew. And so while it does say that raise morale is a first mate only, maybe this bard as a special crew member, or sort of like as a junior officer, you know, the assistant to the first mate. I'm sure there's an official name for that, but if you get the concept. Or even the assistant to the cook. The cook is an officer. Maybe they can take over or enhance some of the duties of the regular officer. Cool. At least I hope it's cool. Has this been informative? Has this maybe helped you realize that running a resource management campaign is doable and it can be fun? You do have to keep track of things. It is very literally an accounting mini game within D&D. And for some people, they say, I don't want to worry about that. I have a hard enough time being interested in how many gold pieces I carry as a single character, let alone doing anything for party treasure of 5 people, let alone doing being the treasurer for a ship of 40 or more. So you would really want to make sure you have the right players that are in the mood to participate in what you're offering. And as a DM, that you are willing to go that extra mile to provide this kind of world building from the ground up, or, you know, you start at a particular tier and you have to make those investments. If I have 1,000 gold pieces as captain of the ship, do I buy a magical cutlass, or do I set that aside in a repair fund for the ship? What's more important? Because that's just as much D&D as me saying, I don't know, a bunch of, like a ghost ship rolls up and you got to fight undead on the decks of your own ship. That could be fun and exciting and very much a part of a sailing campaign as well. I wanted the huge one, but I'm not sure I can swing it this month.
You've got Abolette wissen my name on it. Ich shall name him will.
Well, Rhodey, I mean, you don't need to go out of your way to... I mean, if you're overspending or whatnot, man, make sure you're taking care of yourself first. But, I mean, with that, I'll set it aside for you. And you give me, you know, let me know in a discreet fashion a name and an address to send it to. Or if you want me to hang on to it, if you want more, if you want the large size as like a little baboo bullet to go along with it, then we can hang on to it there too. Chaotic says, I'll be HR, someone else can do the accounting. Hey, HR is the first mate's job. The accounting is kind of more on the quartermaster. Depending. Maybe even the cook. HR, rude. We're a tiefling ship, dude. Not humans. Yeah, who needs human resources? We need tiefling resources. I guess it'd be humanoid resources. Unfortunately, then centaurs aboard your ship might feel left out because they are technically fey and not humanoids. So watch out if you have a centaur crew member. That'd be kind of interesting, wouldn't it? I feel like creatures are going to have a bad time on a ship. Or centaurs are going to have a bad time. Could be. They might need special, special, like, horseshoes or something to help grip onto the deck, or... Obviously, the rigging is going to be a problem. There's actually rules about them in Return to Ravnica that they only climb at... Like, climbing is normally half speed, but even centaurs go even slower than that because they have a harder time having to climb with their unique biology. But you get some Simic hybrids aboard a ship, oh. All right. Well, so here are the concepts, right? We know that we have certain pressures that we have to overcome, and we made this because this is going to help us in our next part when we think of campaign, or not, I guess campaign in the sense that it's just going to be a very long-running story. But with the adventures we want to present to our players that are going to meet what we have over here, as well as make our world come alive in a way that's not just an accounting minigame set in a D&D engine. Sorry for failing to be politically correct. This is Cataclysm. All right. So everyone, get a snack or drink. Use the restroom if you have to. We'll be back in 10 minutes. And let's bring up some awesome ideas for an adventure, huh? Hey, GM Vault. Oh, you arrived just as we're taking a break. Hang in there, and we're going to move into the next segment where we're going to be designing a campaign around the sort of ship-based episodic adventures and resource management.